The following is an exclusive presentation of Optimum Local. It's Optimum or it's not.
Suffolk County Legislator Tom Cilmi is here on the Meet the Leaders set. He's ready for a Patrick Halpin grilling right now on MTL. I'm Pat Halpin, and welcome to Optimum Local's Meet the Leaders. We're getting you to the heart of local government right here, right now with Suffolk County Legislator Tom Cilmi. Legislator Cilmi, it's great to have you back on Meet the Leaders.
Great to be with you again, Pat.
So you represent a district in the town of Islip. What communities are part of that district?
Which is actually changing. Currently, I represent all of Islip Hamlet, East Islip, Great River, Islip Terrace, a little bit of Bayshore, Bohemia, some of Ronkonkoma, Islandia, and it's actually expanding now to include the Islip portions of Hauppauge next year.
So, but by and large, it sounds like your district is pretty close to what it was, except for it coming up a little north up to Hauppauge.
Yes, that's pretty much true.
So why didn't you vote for the reapportionment then? It sounds like a pretty fair reapportionment plan.
Well, the result may have been fair, but the process wasn't fair.
Why is the process unfair?
The process wasn't fair because we had a commission in place.
Yeah. That didn't do anything.
A bipartisan commission. They didn't, listen, they tried. The rules that were set forth in the beginning weren't appropriate. You had to have a judge, for example, that was retired.
Why are judges necessarily apolitical? You and
That's a good question.
You perhaps haven't been around. You're a businessman. You haven't been around politics as long as I have.
I agree with you.
We know that these judges, even the ex-judges, they become judges because of their activities in politics.
That's right. And you know, although the result worked out for incumbents, it didn't really work out for the electorate, because what it did was protected incumbents. They took Democratic, traditionally Democratic election districts, gave them to the Democrats, took Republican election districts, gave them to the Republicans.
And made them more Republican.
And made them more Republican. And the way that they sort of stuck it to the Republicans was they split up some of our communities. So where I represented all of Islip Hamlet, all of Islip Terrace, all of East Islip, for example, they basically cut those communities in half now, as they did for Legislator John Kennedy in giving me Hauppauge. And so they've split communities. So now it forces us to represent a broader area, and it'll make it a little bit more difficult from a campaign point of view, but it gives me the opportunity to meet some new people, which I'm very excited about.
I'm smiling because I understand the theory of a nonpartisan reapportionment.
Right.
The reality is every 10 years you have to make these districts, whether it be a congressional district or a county legislative district, more or less equal in terms of population, one person, one vote. And who should do it? Why should that responsibility be given to an anonymous group, some commission, and the duly elected officials, who are the county legislators in this case, and not do it? My view is that, look, it is a political process. By and large, this was a pretty good reapportionment. I understand your point, but compared to what's going on in other times, other places, other legislatures, this is something that people could live with.
I suppose so in the end. I mean, ultimately, we'll make it work. We'll all make the best of it. I read an article in the paper today. Brookhaven is going through a redistricting process, and they have sort of this nonpartisan or bipartisan commission in place to do it. And Supervisor Mark Lesko is very optimistic that it's going to come out fine. So we'll see.
The way it comes out fine is that you basically maintain the status quo. But sometimes as I think about the county legislature, and we're going to get into the issues confronting the legislature and the county in a second, the legislature is pretty evenly divided. So, Democrats and Republicans, by and large, it might swing 1 or 2 seats in either direction. But there's been a tradition, for the most part, of people trying to work together across party lines. It doesn't seem to be as partisan as, for example, it is in Nassau County.
Certainly not as partisan as it is in Nassau County. I think my first term in office was less partisan than it's turning out to be now. I think with last year's elections, we have a 12-6 majority for the Democrat side, and so I, as a Republican, find myself oftentimes being thwarted in terms of some of the policies and legislation that I put forth. You know, it's, and a lot of the information that's being shared between the county executive and the legislature is being shared at a much more, much broader level with the Democratic caucus than it is with the Republican caucus.
Well, you got to line up those votes in order to get things through.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the big challenge, and it's the budget. The new legislature came in January, new county executive came in, and everybody knew that the prior legislature and the prior county executive left a mess for the new group. I mean, a structural deficit this year of $150 million or more. And if you play it out over the course of a couple of years, a Blue Ribbon Commission said it's over $500 million. So let's start. Here we are in July. 6 months have gone by. Let's start with a 6-month report card. How much of that $150 million has been closed this year with steps taken by the legislature and the executive, in your estimate?
Very little. But we have to go back. We have to start with a standpoint of credibility of the numbers. Right, we have a county executive's budget office and a legislature's office of budget review that comes to us at the beginning of the year and says to us, we expect the deficit to be $406 million.
Over 3 years.
Over 3 years. Now, mind you, these are folks who collectively earn probably more than $1 million in the county annually. Their sole responsibility is to oversee and look at budgets.
Fair enough.
So they come to us and they say it's $406 million, and we have to pass a budget every year, and we did last year with the understanding that the budget was balanced. And we're told that by the budget people.
But it was balanced based on a layoff of 300 to 400 people.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter was it supposedly was balanced based on the budget people's assertions. So now we start this year, and we're told by those same budget people that we have a 3-year deficit of $406 million. County executive assigns a panel of private sector individuals, seven folks, who come in and look at the numbers, and they say it's $530 million. It's $100 million difference. That's significant to me. You have the comptroller of Suffolk County, Joe Sawicki, coming to us a couple of months later and saying the 2011 budget we expected, or they presented to us, was $30 million in the hole. He says it's now $60 million in the hole. So now the deficit goes up to $560 million based on this task force's assumptions. Now we see in the paper the other day, and the Democrats have had a press release that touts the deficit has been reduced to $300 million. That's a $260 million reduction. The fact of the matter is the numbers, while admittedly huge, are incredible. When you start out with a $400 million number, then you go to a $560 million, then you go down to a $300 million number, what do we believe? Right. So we have to find the accurate starting point here. I'm not sure where it is, but we have our budget review office looking at it again now, and I'm sure we'll get to a number that we can start and work from. Now, with that said, your question was, what have we done so far?
And I want you to hold that thought, because we have to take a short break. We come back, let's dig into the detail as to what's been done thus far and what you think needs to be done going forward. So stay back. Stay with us. MTL will be back in 90 seconds.
Some goodbyes are worth fighting for. Help the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation honor Marines by educating their children at mcsf.org.
You can't text and pay attention to the world around you, and you definitely can't text and drive. Every year, deaths due to distracted and negligent driving are increasing. In fact, while drunk driving rates have dropped greatly, negligent driving fatalities have skyrocketed. Find out more at negligentdriving.com.
Did you get a call from the coach about those kids who were caught drinking?
Not our guys.
They know better.
Yeah, they know better.
Heads up, sport.
Real kids are curious about alcohol. 40% tried by the 8th grade. Talk early, talk often, get others involved.
Welcome back to Meet the Leaders, here with Suffolk County Legislator Tom Cilmi. Legislator, you're a private sector guy, and you and I know that in the end, if you can't agree on the numbers, Democrats, Republicans, executive, legislature, you're going to spend all your time debating the numbers and not getting to the solutions. We're talking about the county budget. You mentioned that you expect the Budget Review Office to come out with a report to say, okay, where do we stand? Roughly 6 months, halfway through the fiscal year. When do you expect that?
I would expect that would happen sometime before September. We get back in session again at the end of July. We begin our meetings again, and we start talking about the county's operating budget, which is due from the county executive the middle of September. So I would expect that the numbers will come out shortly before then. That will give a platform to the county executive with which to jump off of with whatever the budget proposal is.
So let's talk about the steps that have been taken this year to save money this year. I mean, you went through this painful process of laying off over 300 county employees. A layoff of that magnitude has never occurred in Suffolk County, but it's done, and it was bumpy at best, and some of the layoffs are really kind of questionable. I know that you've raised questions about them. Talk to me about that.
Well, ultimately, I think many of the questionable layoffs have been resolved and restored. And you saw, initially we had numbers of greater than 400 that were due to be laid off, and I think we ended up with something in the middle twos.
But did you get the savings that you needed as a consequence of those adjustments?
I mean, we haven't seen what the numbers are yet, but I think we will see some savings from that. We offered an early retirement incentive to some of our employees as well.
Do people take advantage of that?
Some have taken advantage. I don't think as many as we expected. And we restored some of the positions that are funded by other levels of government.
I mean, explain what that is. I mean,
well, what happens is that the county receives quite a bit of funding from New York State and from the federal government.
To do what?
To do a variety of things in public safety, in social services, to provide public assistance, in health, for example. And those are areas that are big in terms of the number of employees. So when you have positions that are grant funded from these other levels of government, to remove those positions from our budget doesn't really help us from a budgetary point of view.
Yeah, and you lose those services.
And you lose those services. Now, at the same time, some of the layoffs were in areas that are revenue-generating areas.
Give me an example.
Well, for example, our clerk's office, they lost some employees. They generate a lot of revenue. I think $18 million, I think, last year from our county clerk's office. Judy Pascal is doing a terrific job. And yet she's being, these resources are being taken away from her, and those are the resources that could help us deal with these budgetary problems.
I mean, you're a business guy. If you could hire a salesperson for $50,000 who generates $100,000 or $200,000 in revenue, I would think you would do that every day.
That's what we need to be doing, and that was the problem that we saw on the Republican side, in large part, with the layoffs that were originally presented to us. There didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to looking at the value of these employees and the true cost of these employees before we went ahead and put this list before the legislature for a vote.
But you also took other steps. For example, the county asked to create its own traffic violations bureau so you could keep more of those fines here in Suffolk County as opposed to sending them to New York.
We've worked with the New York State Legislature, and to their credit, our state delegation did a really terrific job of advocating for us here in Suffolk County. We were able to get a traffic violations bureau passed, which is something that I've been advocating for some time.
It seems so long overdue. I mean, Nassau County has had one for years and years and years. If you think about the hundreds of millions of dollars in lost revenue, you scratch your head and say, why did it take so long?
Well, you and I don't have to really scratch our heads because we both know the politics in Albany, right? So We think politics in Suffolk County and Nassau County is bad. The politics in Albany are worse, although they've gotten much, much better, and that's why we've seen the results that we've seen for Suffolk County. So we have a Traffic Violations Bureau that we'll create next year. We have a Taxi and Limousine Commission that will also help us with revenue and help our consumers.
What is that going to do? Is that going to regulate
Basically,
taxes?
it'll allow us to register taxis and limousines in the livery business. And so it'll allow us to have mutual agreements so that they can transport between Suffolk and Nassau and New York City, et cetera, and we can generate some revenue at the same time.
You know, one of the things that's bothered me is that we have all of these taxis. Many of them operate almost like gypsy taxis, where they operate on their own. Some towns and villages regulate them, most don't.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason in terms of fares that they charge. It costs you $50 to get from the Huntington train station to Northport.
Yeah, and that's why this is a win for us budgetarily, and it's a win for the consumers as well. So we're thrilled with what our state delegation has done this year.
What about these red light cameras? I have to say, I've paid a couple of those red light tickets, not to Suffolk County, to Nassau. It's changed my behavior.
Right.
But it seems like a backdoor tax to me.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that if you could, you'd have a police officer on every corner trying to enforce the law to make the roads safer for our drivers. The fact of the matter is you just can't do that. So to put up a camera at an intersection, which has been proven to be very dangerous, if that changes behavior and makes people drive more carefully.
But it's also very lucrative to the county. I mean, you guys,
well, of course,
you all expect to raise tens of millions of dollars by sending out these tickets.
Well, that's true. But again, if you had a cop on that corner, the cop would be writing the tickets, and it'd be costing us more money.
That's
so
true.
It's a net positive for the county, and it's a net positive for drivers. The thing that we have to watch out for with these red light cameras is how we structure the deal for the additional cameras that we're going to be installing. Because right now, a lot of money goes to the company that put up the cameras in the first place, first of all. Second of all, there's an issue with the yellow lights. People who are getting these tickets because they're unsure whether to speed through the yellow light or to stop at the yellow light, and the length of time that the yellow lights are there varies tremendously. You know, what we're looking for is basically some direction from New York State and from the federal government.
Okay. As somebody who has paid those tickets thinking that I could beat the yellow light, I went online and looked at it, and I realized as I looked online, say, oh gee, it was yellow. It didn't really turn red. Right. It turned red shortly after I got into that box, and looking at the car rolling up, I'm speaking honestly now.
Right.
I owed that ticket. I should have stopped I should have slowed down and stopped as opposed to accelerating. And I guess that's changed my behavior.
Well,
so it does change behavior.
It's interesting. I've had constituents come into my office and say, you know, I got this ticket and I know it wasn't me. I know I stopped. I know.
Let's go to the videotape.
Let's go to the videotape, which is a great system that they have in place. You can actually go and look at the photographs and look at the video. And I haven't had one person leave my office yet that's said, let's fight this because.
Okay, because it was a quick yellow. Okay, we're more Meet the Leaders right after this.
Are you playing a dangerous game with the future of America's citrus? Move a citrus plant, and you could be spreading a disease that kills citrus. On its own, the disease can't move far, but in a car, an infected plant can travel miles. Move a citrus plant, and it could be game over for our citrus. Now it's your turn. Please, don't risk citrus. Don't move citrus. Learn more at saveourcitrus.org. A message from the USDA.
Building girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. That's what Girl Scouts of the USA has been doing for 100 years.
Did you know being a scout helps girls become good environmental stewards? From recycling projects to beach cleanups, Girl Scouts protect our natural resources. I'm Legislator Sarah Anker, and I was a Girl Scout.
Support Girl Scouts of the USA. Call your local council today.
We've been talking to Legislator Tom Cilmi about the budget, and Tom, let's talk about how do we get out of this. I mean, obviously, you can't tax your way out of this deficit. It's got to come from savings and revenues from a variety of sources that are probably aligned more with services and growing the economy. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The legislature passed a tax increase last year to the maximum allowable percentage, 2%, based on the state's cap. It got us $12 million. It doesn't solve a $500 million or a $300 million budget deficit. And every time you raise taxes, somebody else leaves our county, leaves the state for greener pastures.
But the county share of the tax levy is pretty small.
That's very true.
Look, I mean, that's a whole nother show. My view is I think we need one county school district, and that would save a lot of money, probably improve education, but that's not what you're responsible for.
Well, that's true, but the reality is that we're forced to live within, this reality that we have, where school district property taxes are tremendous, and overall the tax picture is forcing taxpayers off of Long Island.
So how do we grow this economy? And one of the things that I've noticed is that the natural increase in assessed valuation. So, for example, Canon comes to Huntington. They're building their North and South American headquarters right there in Melville. Big building, a lot of people. They're going to pay a lot in property taxes. The county gets none of that because you don't increase your tax levy as a result of the growth in the assessed valuation, it seems.
Well, there's a variety of things as far as economic development. We've made some great strides. A couple of years ago, I started pushing this whole idea of having an online permit system.
Very important.
So that we can not only allow folks to apply for permits for growth and development online, but so that they could track their permits online as well in real time. And to the county executive's credit, we're getting that done now.
Good.
Okay? We started it during the Levy administration, did a lot of work, and the county executive is working through it now, and we have a product that's online and working. So we're going to continue to develop that. That's going to help.
Is technology a tool that will enable you to be more efficient and reduce headcount through attrition?
I mean, at this point we're at a headcount that's so low as it is.
Okay.
But it'll certainly help us be more efficient, and that's good for economic development. It's good for a developer to be able to go online and see, he's got 6 or 7 permit applications. Where are they? Where are they stuck? What do we have to do in order to get those through? And
it also creates a dashboard for your county health department, or for that matter, the Department of Economic Development. That's both are involved in. Say, okay, where do things stand aggregately, and give you all kinds of reports as to, okay, what are the ones that are slow and why?
And here's where we need to do better. We have in some segments of Suffolk County, let's talk about public works, for example. We sometimes have, and it's developed over the years, this is not new, we have a get 'em while we can attitude. Okay, now, so what that does is this. So you have a business owner that's going to build a new business on a corner, street corner. Department of Public Works expects that business will be successful. So they require the business to pay for public infrastructure in anticipation of the success. Sometimes those payments can be $10, $20, $30, $100,000. I have one in Islip right now that business owner left. He invested $300,000 in a piece of property trying to build a new business. It finally got to the point where the county was dragging our feet and they couldn't work out any sort of settlement. They wanted to put in new traffic signals with crosswalks and on public roads. And so he finally said, I can't deal with this anymore, I'm going somewhere else. And so we have to eradicate that attitude. We have to eradicate the get 'em while we can attitude and say to people who want to build their businesses and grow the economy, how can we help you? Let's not punish you. How can we help you?
You're so right. Even if the county said, look, we'll pay 50% of this, you pay 50% of it, and we'll come up with a payment plan over 5 or 10 years, whatever's reasonable.
Right.
And if they don't pay, you can put a lien on the property. You'll get your money.
Exactly. And there's got to be a little bit more urgency to this whole thing.
I agree with you.
I mean, business owners just can't afford the delays that government, you know, that government has dealt with for years and years and years.
And you're right, you got to be more business friendly. The other thing I think people in government forget is that, yeah, property taxes are important, that businesses will pay. The sales taxes are important. But the salaries that businesses pay have a tremendous ripple effect through all parts of the economy.